I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really happy to have you here on Radio Pikine Diaspora. Thank you for being our guest speaker today.
Thank you.
And we also have Mr. Sen on the line. Hello, Sen?
Yeah, Brother, I'm listening, yeah.
Okay, so Adrienne is online. Adrienne, we're really happy to have you over here. Adrienne, you are a friend, you are an artist, you are an educator, you are a sculptor, you do a lot in terms of art. Before we go any further, I would just like to ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay, I'm Adrienne Wheeler, and as Ibou said, I'm an artist educator at Rutgers University, and I'm a visual artist as well, and an independent organizer of exhibitions.
Yeah, a free, curator, and you've been curating a lot of shows recently. Adrienne, before we go any further, I would just like to ask you, how did you get involved in art?
Well, I've always been exposed to art. I didn't study art formally, but there were artists in my family. My father's brother was an artist. Actually, my father and two of his brothers were commercial photographers, but one brother was actually a painter. His wife was a sculptor, and their close friends were artists like Norman Lewis, Romare Bearden, Herb Gentry, Carol Bayard. So I was fortunate to be exposed to those artists, particularly Norman Lewis, at a very young age. That was the beginning of my life in art, certainly as one who has loved art and collected art off and on various periods in my life.
Yeah. So Adrienne, we know that your work is really original, and you do original sculpture, which is dealing with nature. Can you please tell us about the kind of work you do?
Well, first, I don't know how original it is. I think most art in some way is born out of some other either movement of art or exposure to other artists or philosophies. My art references West African and Central West African healing traditions. So I have gathered a lot of information about Nkisi, which would be considered medicines coming out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, that area of Central West Africa. I am a priest in the Yoruba tradition, so there are certainly elements of those practices and traditions that inform and find their way into my work. And as you know, I work primarily with sticks, although I've had, the opportunity to participate as an artist in residence at Rutgers University with Professor Nick Klein in a glass book project. So I've introduced glass into my project, and recently a huge opportunity to create a mural as part of Gateways to Newark, Entryways to Newark Portraits, which is a huge mural project on McCarter Highway, Route 21 in Newark.
You talk about branches and wood and stick. That's what your work is mostly about. Can we say that your work is connected with African spirituality?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. And what influences your work? Is it your Yoruba teaching experience, or is it your research is about African art?
Well, a little of both. But I have to say, what started it really, I have to credit Bisa Washington, who's an incredible artist here in Newark and who has exhibited internationally. But Bisa is also a Yoruba priest, but she has done a lot of work, actual pieces around the Egungun or masquerading tradition. And I think I became really interested when I was helping her move one of her egungun pieces that she had exhibited at BAM during Dance Africa. And I was just fascinated. I think the wind was blowing, and I was fascinated with the flow of fabric. So I went right home and attempted to embellish my own ancestral staff to replicate, the flying fabrics or strips of fabrics that are associated with the dressing of the egungun masquerader. So it really started from that, where I attempted to use one of my grandmother's dresses, and it wouldn't work. It just kept falling off, and then I realized that probably my grandmother did not want me to use her dress for my ancestral staff or in a piece of artwork. So I just, used regular strips of fabric and bells and ribbons, and it really started there. And after that, the next step, I think, was Isa inviting me to participate in a doll show. And I didn't, at that time, make dolls, and I still don't consider myself in any way a doll maker. But I decided I would approach the making of the doll using the sticks. I would just stay true to the material that I had started out with. So I found sticks that had split branches so that I could turn them upside down, and they would have legs. And I started dressing them and embellishing them, and they started out as pieces that were maybe 1.5 feet tall, and then some were 6 to 8 inches tall, and I have some that are as tall as 10 feet. So it depends on what stick calls me when I go out looking for them. My process is to actually walk through woods. I don't cut anything off of trees. I only use what's already fallen. So some people tend to call that found object. It really isn't found object to me. It's more repurposing objects in nature and charging them with duties. Healing duties.
Your work. I'm glad you mentioned this in Washington, because your work and the work really connected, and there's an environmental purpose in your works. And I don't call it the found objects. What you're doing is giving a second function to certain elements of nature.
Right.
Which is really good, because roots and branches are really important in African traditional healing.
Yes.
Do you see what you do as combination between natural traditionalism and modernism?
Yeah, a combination of naturalism and modernism?
Yes.
Probably yes, because not all of the work is just a matter of creating these figures. I also do more conceptual wall pieces that would be considered maybe modernist, certainly simplistic in their form, usually in 1 or 2 colors.
And some of your work are wrapped up with white clothes or white canvas. Is there any spiritual connection behind that?
Well, yes. When I collected my first group of sticks, it was after a storm. It was, I don't know if it was Hurricane Irene. I think it may have been Hurricane Irene, many years back, maybe 6 to 8 years back. And I collected a group of sticks in Washington Park in Newark, right across the street from the museum and the main public library. And it was shortly before I had gone through my ceremony to become a Yoruba priest. And I knew for a year I was going to have to wear white. So the idea was to collect these sticks and to create sculptures, 1 a month, for each of the 12 months that I would have been wearing white. And the work would all be in white. So that was the initial idea. It didn't quite work out because another artist, before I actually went through my ceremony, another artist friend, Laura Cuevas, invited me to exhibit in her school, Park Elementary School here in Newark. And it's beautiful elementary school with tons of space. Jerry Gant and I shared that space. We worked in that space together. And that was probably the first time I was offered a large space. So that's when the work really started to get larger and more conceptual. And I used that first group of sticks, and there was a whole area there dedicated just to the white pieces. So that was the beginning of, and the reason I was working in white. And of course, in many traditions, the realm of the ancestors is represented in white, and then there are other uses of white in various spiritualities.
Yeah, because that color is very present in African spirituality. Mostly like people, when you give in calories, kind of milk or white coconut, or you have like white candle and all these things. And when I see that in your work, it really reminds me of a lot of things that I've seen in Africa.
Well, I know, and I recall a conversation that you and I once had about your grandmother. When you visited my home and you were looking at certain things, and you shared with me information and thoughts of your grandmother.
Yeah, because, when I visited your home, it was like I was in British School in Barney, seeing all those shrines, the spiritual places where you have milk, where you have bottled waters, where you have all the things, and and that's what you call Santeria, I think, right?
I do not. There are people that do in this who are Spanish speaking. I always say that I am a Yoruba priest through the Lukumi tradition. So, of course, the Lukumi tradition is the practice of Yoruba spirituality and tradition that came to Cuba. Of course, you have the same tradition called Candomblé in Brazil, and there are people who refer to it as Santeria. I do not.
Yeah. And as a Nigerian preacher and a Yoruba preacher and like an artist painter, how do you combine those two functions?
Well, sometimes it's difficult, because if you're trying to create work that's speaking just to specific tradition, and you can get caught in a web of areas where you're trying to be true to what you're representing, but then you also need the space to create. And sometimes what you create may visually step outside the realm of what you're trying to communicate. So there's always a struggle in there. And sometimes, or I've found as I have grown a little in my practice, I sort of can compartmentalize things so that I don't allow one to get in the way of the other. But it's always there in some way.
Yeah, and my other question is, like, as an African American doing this kind of work, how is your work seen by the people or by some galleries? Because I know when I first came in the United States, the first time I started showing my work, people seen it like, people were saying it's too African, it's too Afrocentric, it's too tribal. Do you have those kind of response from people?
No, I have not had that kind of response from people. I think I've been fortunate because so many artists who have come before me, and you have to remember that I am very much, not chronologically, but in terms of my art practice, a young artist. I mean, my art practice in this way is less than 10 years old. So there are generations, at least 2, 3, possibly generations of artists before me who've paved the way and opened doors to work that references African sculpture, African spirituality, Africa. So I've not had those difficulties, and I'm sure for that reason, because other people have already introduced it. And I think, in mainstream art, there may still be difficulties with it. There's, I'm sure, a lack of understanding in terms of how to present art that's influenced by African traditions, Caribbean traditions, Afro-diasporic traditions.
And then, other than being an artist, Adrienne, you used to have a gallery. You were a gallerist too.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Well, yes. My gallery was in New York on West 25th Street. I focused in the initial stages of the gallery primarily on secondary market artists. So I was spending a lot of time buying inventory, selling inventory. Not until, I guess maybe 3 years into the gallery and running the space, did I show contemporary artists. And the first contemporary artist that was actually generous enough to allow me to exhibit his work was Danny Simmons. So that was probably the one huge show of contemporary work that I had at the gallery. But again, it was primarily secondary market.
Yeah, Danny Simmons is a great artist, and his work is really powerful and strong and spiritual too.
Yeah.
And then you were also like an independent curator. A few years ago, you curated the show in Montclair.
Oh yeah, that was many years ago. Yes, that was at the Montclair Public Library. Yes.
Yeah. What was the title of the name of the show, and for which purpose?
The name of the show. Well, the show was themed around the UN declaration of, that was 2011, I believe, as the International Year for People of African Descent. And I have to say that out of that, the UN has now declared the decade. We have a decade for people of African descent. So there should be plenty of opportunities for artists in the diaspora to create work or to develop exhibitions and programming around that. So I believe that was 2015 to 2025, I believe. So we have lots of work to do.
Yeah, it's going on because a lot of curators are organizing these shows called like Africa at Fair in London and Paris and New York and everywhere. I think now the artists in the diaspora have the possibility on, to show their work everywhere around the world. And this will give like African art or African American art a great impact around the world.
Yes, and I've recently curated an exhibition at Rutgers University as a result of a seed grant through the Chancellor's office. But the first, it was an inaugural exhibition for me as curating on Rutgers campus. It was the first exhibition of its type, and it's also a first for the artist whose work is showing. And her name is Ibou Ndoye, Badebo, and she is Yoruba American and an incredible artist. She's working, her medium is hair. So she has 12 pieces at Rutgers in the history department on the third floor, and she's also installing a show at Kane University. She's in a group show at Kane University.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to give opportunities to those artists to show their works in universities because those are great places for the kind of shows. And you are also like an educator. You've been organizing and teaching Yeah, I mean, teaching artists at Rutgers University. Can you tell me about like the program you are in at the university, please?
Yes, it's an outreach program at Rutgers University. I'm an artist educator there, along with a group of other artists, many of whom you know. Basically, what we do, as each exhibition changes, we develop workshops that are specific to a demographic, any demographic that we happen to serve, which could be the juvenile detention center, senior citizen centers, daycare centers, elementary schools, high schools. So we reach a number of people through the programming at Rutgers University through the Paul Robeson Gallery.
This is a very interesting thing because what I realized is that the galleries in Newark are really doing like a good job, community work. For example, like we have Ajaira, you have City Without Wall, you have Rutgers University. They are all doing like outreach programs.
Yes, Gallery Pharaoh, outreach programs. Yes.
Yeah, working with high schools because I remember doing the outreach program with City Without Walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are those programs founded by the financed by the city?
I need to correct myself. I referred to the Rutgers program as Artreach, and Artreach is the City Without Walls mentoring program, and the program at Rutgers is actually Art Moves.
Art Moves, yeah.
Yeah.
Then we can say you like in two programs like City Without Walls with Outreach and Rutgers University Art Move.
Right.
Yeah, and do you work with like the students or with the high school students?
Well, at Rutgers, I requested this actually to work in the juvenile detention center. So I present a lot of my workshops in the juvenile detention center. Although I also work inside the gallery with groups who are coming in. So sometimes it's senior groups. Then there are two sites that I visit that are senior centers. I don't work a lot with the preschoolers. I have worked in the high school, but so usually it's an adult population that I'm working with.
So how is it like to work in the juvenile center with all those kids that are locked up?
It's a mixed bag of emotions working in the juvenile detention center, because you see all kinds of untapped creative ability and energy in the juvenile detention center. And of course, when we're there, we are only there to present a workshop, and you're not engaging with the participants in the workshop, asking any questions about how, what, where, or why. But of course, we understand systemically the problems that lack of programming for youngsters who, for lack of better word, at risk, because it seems like all of that's the word that's currently used, and I can't think of anything else that is more appropriate, but lack of programming for students who are at risk, poverty, all the things that lead to any number of social ills. And then, of course, we, in addition to needing widespread reform in education, we also need tremendous reform in our penal system, or in the penal system.
Yeah, it must be like really hard and emotional to work with this kind of kids.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult. But in some way, I feel that I'm able to give something back. Because I have received a lot from a lot of places. From people, from friends, family. Spiritually, so they say, to whom much is given, much is expected. So I'm always aware of that.
Because I did a lot of workshop with kids at risk with disabilities, black people with disabilities. But these workshops will make you like a better person. Will like teach you how to love yourself more and how to respect all the people who are in difficulties. You know.
Yeah, is that a question or that's just your commentary?
It's a commentary, but if you want to make it a question, please. No. Yeah.
We'll let that rest with you.
You know, and again, let's talk about Newark. With gentrification, how the city of Newark is changing right now. How do you feel about it as an artist?
Well, again, I am a young artist, young in terms of my art practice in Newark, but I am very old in my connection to Newark. I mean, I have my great-grandparents' wedding certificate from 1887 in the city of Newark, and actually the walls where my mural is located on Miller Street. Of course, my dad had gone to Miller Street Elementary School. On Wright Street, my dad lived on Wright Street as a child, and then if you're walking on the backside of the support wall, the retaining wall for the railroad, and that's actually, the mural is painted. The murals are painted on the support wall. But if you walk along the backside on Railroad Avenue, you know, I pass the street, Green Street, where my grandmother was born in 1896. I pass Vesey Street, where my grandfather was born in 1889. So my connection to Newark is unique in that way. I think it's unique to African Americans, and it gives me a different gaze on Newark, because I've seen Newark in my lifetime go through any number of changes, and then I've had the benefit of hearing stories about Newark, you know, that go back to its city as a Victorian city and earlier. So this is there's so much conversation and debate right now around Newark and the arts. And what I can say is I am always happy to see a proliferation of arts and arts institutions and organizations developing anywhere. So I'm thrilled to see that. What I want to ensure is that all of the opportunities that this proliferation of arts and arts organizations, that these opportunities are accessible to everyone in the city of Newark, and that we are not focusing everything in downtown, and that we are also not creating so many little pocket things outside of the downtown area, pocket things, so ancillary spaces in the various wards and neighborhoods. While I think that's a good thing, I mean, it makes art accessible to people who may not travel downtown. But I don't want to see that kind of thing develop to the point where it prohibits people from traveling to these other spaces and actually traveling even outside of Newark. Our current mayor, Raz Baraka, has many initiatives on the table that I think are wonderful in terms of bringing art to other areas of the city, and through that, piquing the interest of people in various neighborhoods throughout the city of Newark, enough to connect them to what else is going on in the city.
Yeah,
in the downtown area where things are developing. Those will be shared spaces. Rutgers University also has a wonderful initiative in Express Newark that, as years go on, will provide opportunities to bring people into that space. The space will be accessible. You know, Algira, Victor Davison has done an incredible job in his 30-plus years on nurturing and growing and sustaining Algira.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of things going on in Newark right now. A lot of galleries being opened, a lot of art exhibitions.
Sorry, I just wanted to, before I forget, you know, also the Newark Museum in its 100-plus years has never closed its doors. You know, through all of the various stages that the city has gone through, the museum's doors have remained open. And their educational programming really is tops in the country.
You know, Adrienne, like art and artists have like a magnetic power, because artists can go and live in old buildings, change the neighborhood, and the neighborhood will attract like new businesses. The businesses will attract new developers. The developers will attract like rich people, and then the cycle will change. Like the artists going to be kicked out. Don't you think what happened to Jersey City is going to happen to Newark?
Well, it does happen. I mean, and it has happened to some artists in some of their spaces, and there are artists that are occupying spaces where that's a huge concern. So that's always a concern for artists. Artists are always the ones. Artists actually lead the gentrification movement, not with that intent. You know, artists lead that movement because they revitalize neighborhoods by bringing art into neighborhoods, bringing art into spaces that have been abandoned or neglected or in areas that are so-called blighted.
It always demographically goes like that. First of all, immigrants will come to a place, occupy the place, then artists will come, students will come, middle class will come, rich people will come, and then first come, first go, the whole cycle can change again. So what artists should do is just like learn how to buy. But artists don't buy properties. How can
I don't know that that's, I mean, I don't want to make that kind of, it's a very general statement. I think that some artists do. They buy spaces, and their spaces are live-work spaces. The mayor is creating opportunities in the city of Newark where artists can buy spaces that can be live-work spaces. And I understand what you're speaking to. I mean, in a collective and a collaborative way, it would probably be very beneficial if groups of artists would get together and purchase some of these properties. But again, properties are, at least in Newark, and I'm only speaking of Newark, many of these properties have been sitting for decades. They are filled with asbestos. There's a huge amount of money required to revitalize those kinds of spaces. And most artists that I know don't have that kind of money. And there aren't those kinds of grants available necessarily to clean out those buildings, to meet all of the environmental upgrades. So it's difficult. It's not, I think that is much easier said than done. I think that the easier thing to do, and the thing that does happen, is that artists find spaces that are available and they activate them. Gladys Grauer did that 40 years ago here in Newark. She had the first gallery run by a woman, first gallery that was for women, created a space for women who were working women, who were mothers, who were wives, and Gladys created a space where women would be able to do all of those things. And to do them comfortably, Yeah,
Gladys is great. She must be in her 90s now, right?
She is. Yep, she is. And she is creating art every day. She's part of another mural project here in the city of Newark. Actually, I'm not sure if it's in the city of Newark, but I know that there are several artists from Newark who are involved in a mural project of PSE&G on their switch station, I think, wall or building.
But let's talk about the murals.
Very active.
Let's talk about the murals in Newark. You did like a very beautiful mural, and it's a very long one. I was really impressed to see that mural. Can you tell us a little about the mural you did in Newark?
Well, the mural I did on the wall is actually a mural of 42 dresses, and it's the same dress, a repeating image of the same white dress, and it's an image of the dress my mother made for her 8th grade graduation here in Newark from Morton Street Elementary School in 1942. I used the image last year for my glass book when I was the artist in residence for the glass book project. And in that project, we were all students and artists in residence and professor as well, created abstract portraits based on interviews that we were reading from the Kruger-Scott African American Oral History Project. So that was an oral history project that was done in 1990s. Interviewing African Americans who had migrated to Newark during the second wave of the Great Migration, but people who had migrated from the South, but specifically to Newark. It didn't focus on people who had gone to other areas in the United States, just specifically to Newark. And while my mother was not one of the original interviewees, she certainly fit the demographic because she migrated here in 1937 with my grandmother. And it's just, this is one of these areas where you know that things are not coincidental, that there are other things that work there in the world of the ancestors and in the spirit world. Yeah. Because that retaining wall, my mother arrived in Newark in 1937 by train. So the train she was on would have gone right over that wall, where her dress is now represented on two walls. And I worked with two assistants, with Adebumi Badebo, the artist who is showing currently at Rutgers, and Karen King Choi, who is the Director of Education at the Paul Robeson Galleries, and a wonderful painter in her own right. So I was very fortunate to have both of them work with me on that mural.
Yeah, it's how long is the mural?
It's between the two walls. It's 418 feet.
280 feet. How?
Right.
Do you have any assistants, and how long did you take it to do it?
Well, we meaning all of the artists who worked on murals, worked for 8 days, from 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. for 8 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now it's one of the biggest or the longest wall in the United States, or
well, it's the largest mural in the state of New Jersey, and the second largest in the country, and it's 1.39 miles.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, a lot of things going on in Newark.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're reminding our listeners that our guest today is Adrienne Wheeler from Newark, artist, painter, sculptor, and an educator, interviewed by Ibou Ndoye on Pikine Diaspora. So, Adrienne, do you have any other projects coming up? What are you working on?
Yes, I do, actually. I'm going to be in a group show in William Patterson University in the fall. So I'm working on an installation for that show.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to say you are also an installation artist. You do a lot of installations. Last year, I think I looked at the show. I kept the show at Rutgers University, and you did an installation of the benches you wrapped up to work on them.
That was several years ago, wasn't it?
Several years ago.
That was that was in Orbit 1 in the gallery upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Was that where I had to stick with the medicine bottles?
Yeah.
Yes. Those were my mother's medicine bottles. So, I say that my mother has been recently a collaborator with me, of course, in allowing me to use her dress for the mural and for the glass book project. And that dress, I have to say, and I know this, I'm jumping around a bit, but that dress sat in my grandmother's cedar chest, which I have, for 73 years.
Wow.
And now it's like taken on monumental life, with the addition of the mural project. So I joke that those dresses jump off the walls at night and they go dancing around the city at night. That they go off doing their healing work at night.
Yeah, I mean, the dresses, like, you see them, it brings back, like, a lot of images. How was your mom's reaction when she saw the dress painted on the wall?
She's just really amazed by the whole thing. And, of course, she's just very excited. She's excited for me, but she is just amazed at the life that this dress has taken. I mean, it really has taken on a life of its own. So she's just thrilled about the whole thing.
And you got a lot of support when you do art, because I was in that show at the Getaway, and your mom was there, Medura, your daughter was there, your sister, Lydia, right? Was there.
Lydia. Mm-hmm.
Lydia and your niece, your whole family. How do you feel about that?
Like, I do. I have a very close knit family. And we're very supportive of one another. My mother is probably my biggest critic. As you know, my mother and my daughter and I live in the same house. So often when I'm working on a piece, when I've finished it, or at least when I think it's finished, I'll show it to my mother. And there have been times where she looks at it and she looks at me and she says, "Bring it back when it's finished." I'll look at it when it's finished. And I have to say though, more often than not, she's right. There's still something there that's unresolved, and she sees it before I do.
I think if you're an artist, you use your mom, it's like that. I had the same experience in Africa because my mom was dressmaker.
Right.
And she would tell me, "Oh, this color is too dark. We have to put this color over here." And I would say, "Hey, Mom, come on, take the paintbrush and finish the fish."
Yeah.
You always have critics when you're at home because they find themselves in what you're doing,
Yeah.
That's the power of art. I like it when it brings like a whole family together,
Yeah. And now my sister, she was approached by someone, a mutual friend of ours, or actually really more a friend of hers, but someone that I've worked with. So when she remarked to my sister, she says, "Well, Lydia, why didn't you tell me your sister was an artist?" My sister's response was, "Who knew?" So my sister sees me and my art in one way, and my mother, is a great collaborator. So.
Yeah, it's always good to have people backing you up when you're an artist, because we always inspired by our families, friends, and communities. Yeah, artists who are involved in community works and are always inspired, and they always have a story to tell.
Yes, and that is very African.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. that family unit, the extended family unit, and the telling of stories, without a doubt, is very African.
Yeah, and this is what makes it like an artist strong, and makes his work or her work strong, because art should have a statement. The statement should be about the art, but not the artist. But right now, the statement is about more artists than the art.
You think?
Yeah. I mean, the statement of art should be on the piece of art, but not on the artist.
Right.
Because we use art to convey our stories, to teach, to educate, and to open people's eyes on realities and on what's going on in our societies.
But then sometimes, and I think more often than not, art, that sometimes there's little separation between the artist and the art. That in some way, whether it's you're looking at realism, modernism, abstraction, abstract expressionism, that it is autobiographical. At least it starts out that way. You know, it's either your explorations, your experiences, because I think at the end of the day, whether we're talking about visual arts, performing arts, literary arts, and I think particularly with literary and visual art, what we bring is our experiences, the way in which we view the world, the way we feel that the world has impacted us. And I think the statement that it's about the art or the artist, I think that sometimes there's little separation. At least that's the way it is for me. I don't want to make generalizations, but that's the way it is for me. I think often there's not a lot of separation.
Yeah, but it reminds me of the proverb that says, know yourself before they tell you. So, and
that's very good, because I think that's important when it comes to this statement about the art, because I am reluctant often to do interviews, and especially those that are going to be written, because when the editing takes place, often the heart of what you've said gets lost, or it ends up missing. I mean, I've read things and I said, well, I didn't say that, or I didn't mean that, or they've misinterpreted that. So I think that proverb is right on the money.
Well, yes, it is, and it's all about stories. It's all about keeping the culture alive. This is what art is about. It's all about knowing yourself, telling the stories of your family and your communities. You know, and
for some, yes, for some.
Yeah, for some it is.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Because some people do art because they know they have to keep the tradition alive. They have to do it. Look at the people out in the villages. They know they're not going to sell, but whatever happened, if they wake up in the morning, they will have to do their art because it's part of them. This is what defines them. They define themselves by what they do.
Right.
You know, and people are defined by what they do, and what they do is for the community. You know, they don't appropriate. They just do it to make people happy, to show their presence in the community that they belong to. You know.
Right. Now, I know, for me, when you say it defines you,
yeah.
Now, I would have to say, in that respect, that it has taken me a long time to catch up to the work. I'm sure the work has always been there in my head, but I didn't start my practice until much later. So, I've taken many turns and done all kinds of other things. And while art has always been a part of my life, certainly as a viewer, as a consumer of art in that way, as one who's practicing art, I finally caught up to the art, because I think it's just been there waiting for me.
Sometimes they'll actually you create to share with other people, and actually create to share with your family, and actually create for just yourself. Just to create one art, and you destroy it. And art always has a purpose to feel, and the purpose of art is really sometimes strong. It goes beyond the piece of art. It fulfills the heart with peace, with joy, with love, with affection, with a lot of things.
Right. Or the opposite. I mean, it can be absolute turmoil and agony for an artist. My father's brother, who was a brilliant painter in my estimation, destroyed all of his work, everything except two pieces. One is an oil painting of a family member, and the other was a caricature of another artist from the who was a teacher at the Newark School of Fine and Industrial Arts. Elwood Dean was the sitter, but my uncle Herb Wheeler destroyed all of his art, and it wasn't until 50, 60 years later, after he had become successful as a commercial photographer, that he actually created another piece of art. And his wife was a sculptor, my aunt, and the NAACP wanted to commission her to do a bust of W.E.B. Du Bois for their International Freedom Award. And she refused the commission because that was not the type of work that she did, and she suggested they ask my uncle. And they did. And he accepted it and created the bust of W.E.B. Du Bois, and it was given to Nelson Mandela upon his release from Robben Island when he came to the United States. It was presented to him as their first International Freedom Award, and then a second casting was done and given to Bishop Tutu, and a third one presented to Sister Sisulu in South Africa. So 3 South Africans were presented with that bust that was created by my Uncle Herbert Wheeler.
Wow. And you have a lot of artists in your family. And I watched a video recently. One of your aunt, I think, who was also a great artist.
That was Irene Wheeler, the sculptor?
Yeah, the sculptor.
Yeah, she was the wife of Herbert Wheeler.
Yeah, she had a show in the 70s. In which museum was it in New York again?
Well, she was with Pleiades Gallery. Pleiades is still in existence. It's in Chelsea. Pleiades is a cooperative gallery. But she also had a show at Algira and at Rutgers University. Yeah, our late dear friend Clement Price went with me to Algira, to the museum, and to Rutgers to discuss with each of them the possibility of showing her work. And Victor Davison did. And at that time, Kathy Schnapper was the curator and director of the Paul Robeson Galleries, and she gave her a solo show there as well. And that was very important to Irene Wheeler because she also was originally from Newark. And while her art career was in New York, she always wanted to exhibit in Newark. So both Victor Davison and Kathy Schnapper made that possible for her. And Clement Price and Dr. Clement Alexander Price.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Hello, Sandy? So, Adrienne, we almost coming to the end of our interview, or?
Okay.
Yeah, President. Yeah, Mr. Ndoye.
Hello, Sam?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I was
listening
to...
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So now, anything coming up? Any show? What show? I mean, and I know you're always showing everywhere.
Well, I'm preparing work for a show that's going to open in the fall at William Patterson University.
Oh, yeah,
at the gallery there. Yeah, it's curated by Kristen Evangelista, who's the curator and director there.
So
it's a group exhibition, and other people that we know well are in that exhibition.
So, any other curator of your job? Are you going to curate another one recently?
At Rutgers, there are 2 more exhibitions. The next one will go up at the end of July, beginning of August, and that's the work of artist Jazz Graff.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one, we don't have a date for it or a location yet. The location of Jazz Graff's exhibition will be in the Office of Admission on Rutgers campus.
Mm-hmm.
And the third space has yet to be determined, but the artist is actually a photographer, Pamela Owens.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two more shows that I'm curating. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's really good. And how did you get your artists when you create the show? Do they have to live in New York, or do you have to like your work, or is they suggested to you?
Well, Umi's work I was familiar with. I'd seen her work when I curated the main stage show for Open Doors last fall. And Jazz Grass, I saw her work. We were in a group exhibition together for the 10th anniversary of the Feminist Art Project on Rutgers, New Brunswick. So that's where I was introduced to her work. And Pamela Owens is a photographer, a younger photographer who I've known, oh my goodness, I guess all of 40 years or so. We all went to the same school. She and her brother and my sister and me, we all went to the same school in North Prospect Hill Country Day.
Yes, Ibou?
That's a long time.
Yes, Ibou?
Yes, Stan, we almost at the end of the interview. Do you have anything to add or to say about what Adrienne just said?
Just thanking Adrienne for sharing her experience and coming to Pikine Diaspora Radio, which means that this is for our whole communities, like whether you are in the United States or in Africa. And what Adrienne has done today, is a proof that, Pikine Diaspora Radio is a kind of bridge, it's a cultural bridge, because Adrienne is explaining her art, as an American, and, with the African audience. That's something that we really cherish, and we appreciate her coming here and hope to see her again and again and again.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity, and I want to say that I would love to visit Senegal, so I'm depending on any of my friends in or from Senegal to help me make that possible.
You'll be more than welcome to come to Senegal, because you're part of us. Because we
Thank you.
we heard your experience about West African art, and it's gonna be something we will appreciate to see you in Senegal.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay, Adrienne, thank you very much, and we're gonna make it happen to take you to Senegal to have show for the biennial, or to connect you with some artists or some residencies, so that you're gonna show your work. And